Hi, I'm Joshua Hayward, Breath of Life School in Yellow Springs, Ohio, and welcome to Life Readings. And thanks for joining me for This Week in the Stars and Cards. And this week begins on Sunday, May 23rd. And we've got a couple of really big astrological events this week. So this is really an important video that you might want to share with other people. All right, well, keeping that in mind, let's just move into the week itself. All right, so right on Sunday, the 23rd, Saturn is actually moving from direct motion, stationing to go retrograde. Okay, so Saturn, the planet of structure and form and discipline and hard work and things like that, stationing in the sign of Aquarius, which is the sign of, well, you know, all the good stuff, you know, kind of like freedom and independence and interdependence and equality. Okay, so that's one thing that's going on. And later on the 23rd, we have the first of two eclipses, and this one will be a total lunar eclipse in the sign of Sagittarius. Okay, so let's back up and start at the beginning. So Sunday, the 23rd, and you've probably been feeling this already because, you know, Saturn's starting to like kind of hunker down, and you can see the motion of it slows down. And outer planets from Saturn out really kind of slow down. They all do, but you really feel the effect of the outer planets, definitely Saturn. So if you've been feeling some pressure, well, that's probably appropriate, you know, and it's definitely appropriate. You know, we tend to think that these things are happening just as a normal course of events, and they are, but there are these underlying things. Hopefully with this type of information in this series is trying to uncover some of that stuff so people can watch it and look at their lives and go, okay, I see this is the kind of, all right, it starts to come together and make sense. So anyway, and it's interesting too, Saturn rules time and space. Saturn's kind of like Father Time. And I'd like to just postulate that as Saturn moves into Aquarius, and we're just the very stages of creating a different reality from the patriarchy and from the fear and control structure of that. I'd like to postulate that maybe we're moving into a different relationship with time. And it seems to me like it seems like time can be either speeding up or sometimes slowing down. I see maybe a little bit of a flexibility in time. Once again, I don't know if I've said this before in this series, but time and space continuum is a construct in reality. It's the reality that we live in. These things can change when viewed from an enlightened perspective. Okay, so anyway, be that as it may, you know, time always speeds up when we're relating to our lives in a certain way, and sometimes when we're having fun, and when we're not, it seems to slow down. Sometimes when we contemplate things and we move into a zone that we're like communing with spirit, it's almost, or if we're creating art of one form or another, it seems like time slows down. Those things it's always been that way, but just for a kind of a fun outlook, take a look at time this year, from this year on, and see if the construct changes. One thing I do know for a fact is that since the 2012 shifting of the paradigm, the Mayan calendar ending, the world tree, all of that stuff, the time moving towards that, I feel that time sped up inordinately. It's almost like, there's like 16 hours in a 24-hour day or something like that. Well, anyway, let's just take a look at what happens now. But be that as it may, that's kind of just a fun thing to play around with. But Saturn's stationing right now, even as we're speaking. It's also stationing on a square to Uranus in the sign of Taurus. And so Uranus is the planet of change. It's more of an Aquarian kind of thing. And Taurus refers to what we value. And not just money, but money is a big part of that. And resources and how we value the planet and the material world that we live in. What's that about? Well, I'd like to postulate again that our relationship with space is changing too now. With this particular square here, we're coming out of what was supposed to signify the end of a paradigm and the beginning of a new paradigm. Maybe space is changing in a way too, and what we value and how we live our lives in the material world. That could be shifting too. But that's a big picture thing, and and this week the Saturn side of it is really emphasizing us to look at our lives structurally and to see how much leverage we have with the world, how much we're stuck inside of this particular structure or another in our lives. Are we dysfunctional and feeling, very caught up in that and feeling limited and feeling like we want to change? And if you're feeling like everything's fine, well, don't worry about this. My guess is, though, that, we're all growing, we're all changing, and that's happening. But once again, it's your choice. So, very patriarchal, transforming and moving on beyond that, changing our relationship with our lives. And later on in this week, we're on the 26th, as I mentioned, we have a very important eclipse. All the eclipses are important, and I really feel that since 2012, and since 2012 or so, but even more so in the last 3 or 4 years, eclipses have become, each one seems to be more and more important in how we relate to our lives. Everything that's coming at us right now is intensifying, and it's wanting us to wake up. It's wanting us to live at, like I said, at a new frequency. Okay, so this is a really cool frequency that's trying to open up, and the moon, which represents our emotional relationship with the world, it's in that really restless sign of Sagittarius. The shadow side of Sagittarius being ideology. Now, that doesn't mean if your moon's in Sagittarius that, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the current situation. Because the moon is in Sagittarius, it's also conjunct the south node of the moon, which is equal to the past, or where we've been. And then Gemini being the north node right now, we're moving into a new sort of thinking. Mercury being Mercury's hanging out around there. It is the planet that Gemini is the ruler of, and they really relate one another. Mercury's in the sign of Gemini right now, and so is Venus, hanging out around the north node of the moon. But the north node is talking about where we're going in general. We're trying to get some new thinking and let go, especially on emotional levels, to the past and the ideology. It's trying to free us up and get our minds and our hearts going in new direction, to be able to research and find out new information. and be able to communicate. Communication in listening is as well as speaking really being important. Okay, so we've got another eclipse that's coming up in 2 weeks. So there'll be much more to talk about. But let me just finish off this, a little bit more information about this eclipse. And that is that it's Jupiter is moving into a square to the nodal axis. And it's not really right on there, but it's kind of close enough for me to think that Jupiter in the sign of Pisces, we need to be inspired to look at our beliefs, our belief structures, and see some stuff about that might be holding us back. Because what we think and what we believe about our lives, Jesus even said, as you believe, so be ye. Okay, and so we really want to believe good stuff about ourselves and our lives. So there's this challenge to let go of beliefs and old ideology this week to move into something really new and powerful. So what a cool week it is, because it's not a minor thing. I really advise to spend some time on the inner, contemplating this stuff, and to really be moving into the outer. Maybe our relationship with time-space continuum, especially with time, is that maybe we have more time to process things than we think. We tend to think that, if we're hesitating, we're being lost. But guess what? Humanity needs to hesitate. Human beings need to pause and to lock in. It's just who we are and what we're doing. It's how we do things. So maybe in this new relationship with time, we've got enough time to process and enough time to act. And if we allow ourselves that consciousness that we're going to move with all of our energy behind us when we are processing, or when we are acting, maybe we're doing both at the same time. Multitasking. All right, so these are the things to think about this week. And now to work a little bit farther with this, to get some more guidance, let's go with some cards. And so I have my deck fanned out here, and I'm going to reach around and find a card. And yeah, well, this is interesting, because we've got interference, which came up either last week or sometime not too long ago. And this is that card where, there's all this mishigas, all this craziness that we see around us. And it's called interference. It's the Eight of Swords. And so we let that get in our way, and we tend to get caught up in that stuff. And sometimes we blame other people, we blame ourselves for this interfering type of energy. Why can't we just move forward? Well, one way of working with this is we need to move back into the center. Jupiter is in the sign of Gemini in this particular card, because it's astrologically designed deck here. And with that in, say, someone's natal chart, there's a tendency to look outside the self too much. And then you get lost, because that invites all kinds of interference. We need to start from inside. And so this week we need to be wary of our other people's projections on our stuff, and maybe we've taken on some of other people's projections. They've become ours. They've formed thought forms, beliefs. Okay, remember Jupiter and Pisces. Let's get inspired to let go of those beliefs. Okay, so what would be next then? We've got the interference card, and so it shows that we're really working on something, and that coming up again is really informative. And so let's look, and okay, this is great. I love this card. This is the Three of Wands. That the first card, interference, was in the mind. The swords have to do with thinking in the mind. This has got to do with energy and action, and I call it alignment or appropriateness. And this is when our actions are consistent with who we are inside. That really lines up with the astrology that I was talking about, all right? So very cool. And there's this identification on a soul level that you can get with this card, that and to make sure that you do feel aligned. And when you're in the interference card, you're really not. So it's pointing back in here. And so aligning the actions inside and out. Very important. And let's see, the third card here. Oh, well, that's interesting. Yeah, this guy, the Knight of Cups, you know, I'll just a little secret, I'm a Cancer. This guy is kind of a Cancer. You can see the crab and the cup up here. But this card isn't about me in this particular case, but I'm just kind of smiling anyway. This is a guy whose shadow side is pretty dysfunctional, emotionally too connected to, or shall we say attached, and has expectations and gets his hopes dashed about things. However, this is a very loving person, and he's not really that attuned to the patriarchy. All right, you know, which, of course, I'm not. You might have guessed that. Anyway, he's on his horse, and he's reaching out and trying to experience love, and he's opening his heart. He's on those wings of love. He's trying to find the beauty in life. So how this really interacts with the other cards in the rest of the reading, I would say that it's kind of different from the patriarchy, which would be more, in some ways, we can utilize those energies, like with the Knight of Swords, the Knight of Wands. They're not necessarily bad cards or bad people. They can be utilized in the right place. The Knight of Discs, the Knight of Earth, also maybe a little bit more attuned to the goddess because of the connection with the earth. But in this particular case, this is male energy that's compassionate and giving and definitely loving. So one thing that we can do to change our lives is to bring our actions, male cards, male energy, has to do with how we do things. And there is a lot of energy with that Three of Wands to do the right thing or to be on the right track there. So let's attune our male energy to our feminine energy a little bit this week and see what we can learn moving, through the Saturn station and the first eclipse, and see where we're going to go in 2 weeks for the second eclipse. And you're going to want to tune in for that. But for now, I'm just going to sign off and say, hey, wow, have a great week, because this is the beginning of change. It just dawns on, it just occurred to me, we want this stuff to be done. We already want to be down the road. We want to have all of these things accomplished already so we can kick back. But we miss so much of learning along the way. In fact, that's a patriarchal concept. To try to get on down the road before and achieve that stuff, before we do it, before we actually do it. There's so much to be learned in the process. So moving into the process this week and loving it, that's the key to creating, in the now.